We're in your life management course. We're in chapter 2, on to section 4, the last section in this chapter, and it talks about illegal drugs. It says, drug abuse has spread in our country to epidemic proportions indeed. Yes, the use of stimulants like meth by youths under 17 years of age has increased greatly. And the children in elementary school are constantly pressured to try various kinds of drugs. So illegal drugs, yeah, they're a big problem in America today. So why do young people take drugs? Let's see what they say. So first of all, they're curious and they don't realize where this could lead them at all. They just thought, wonder what would happen if I just took a drug for fun? They start out for fun and they can end up in a dark place because people tell them that it's fun and it's not. Number 2, they want to experience thrills. Maybe they're bored at school or having really trouble at home, or maybe they are having dating problems and their girlfriend or boyfriend just left them. Or maybe they just want to escape frustrations. So, and they would needless to know that these drugs will compound all of their problems. They're pressured by peers, of course. They want to be part of the group and they want to follow the crowd. What does it say here? Basically, it says, when a number of killer whales were beached in Florida's Loggerhead Key, scientists postulated that roundworms in the ear of one of the whales damaged his navigation sense, making him confused. The other whales just followed him and as he swam towards the beach and they all died. You don't want to follow someone the wrong way. So don't let your peers lead you to taking drugs. That's the worst thing you could imagine. And do they really care about you? No. So number 4 says they lack inner resources. Some people just have an empty life with no purpose because they don't know Jesus, and they want power to live. You want to be forgiven. They have this empty place that they're seeking some kind of peace, and they think possibly, taking drugs will help them, or maybe they're experiencing shame. They're ashamed of something, so they take the drugs to cover up their shame. Number 5, drugs are easily available. Classmates are eager to sell drugs to people, and dealers are all over the place. So that's horrible too. Some only take drugs sometimes. Some take, some take them for other reasons, for like to stay awake. They want to stay awake, so they're taking some kind of speed to stay awake. And some take them to sleep because they can't sleep. Or maybe losing weight. A lot of people losing weight would take drugs, and these drugs are, some of them, very addicting. Many of them become habitual users. A name for a habitual user that's more than habitual is called a junkie. And there's a junkie whose entire lives revolve around the drug scene. And they believe they can't function apart from drugs. And they spend all of their energies obtaining and using drugs. They even commit crimes. They lie, cheat, and steal, for their drugs. They need them. Those are not just habit users, but on to being controlled by these drugs. Okay, let's see here. Next page. So let's go over the types of drugs, now. So this is what I want to go over here, just so you know what's out there, because a lot of times, especially if you're not around it, you don't really know, and you don't really know. You hear about it sometimes, but you don't know what people are experiencing. I've seen a lot of drug users because I've been in the jail ministry for 25 years, and I've seen horrific things that drugs have done to people. One story I have to tell with this LSD is, when I was young, I just become a Christian not too long before that, and I met Papu, and Papu was getting off drugs. He came to Jesus, and he So he knows how these drugs affected him, and they affected him very, very badly. Coming to the Lord delivered him from them. But we were on the porch, and my brother, who went to Harvard University, and his friend were there, and they were saying how it was okay to take LSD. In fact, LSD actually was invented at Harvard University, I think. So anyway, he was talking about LSD and how it can, widen your mind and make you more creative and all these things. And he was taking LSD. He's offering it to my dad. At that time, my dad was like an alcoholic and basically said, "Oh yeah, I'll take some, whatever." And we were on the porch, and Perry, I remember, he said, you may have, good times, good trips. He says, but once you have a bad trip, you'll never be the same. And he was trying to explain how horrific LSD did when he had a bad trip, and he was seeing people in caskets and terrifying things and paranoid and never thought he could get out of it. He was telling them this. And the other guy that was with my brother, he was adopted to this family, and his dad was a wealthy judge in the area. And he was like, "Oh yeah. And I knew they were taking that. So what happened next? Not too long after that, within a month or two, my brother had given LSD, and they went up to, his family had a lake house, very wealthy place in Lake Okoboji, lake house, and my brother gave him some drugs, and he went up to the lake house, and he ended up shooting himself. Now not that he knew that he was even shooting himself, but his dad had just given him a gun for protection, and he ended up shooting himself, and my brother found him dead, as he went up to meet him there on LSD. He didn't know what he was doing or what, but he just learned how to shoot himself. Was he depressed? They didn't know if he was depressed or what, but he ended up dying. And so terrible things have happened from drugs, especially, from LSD and stuff. So anyway, let's get going, and I'll tell you. Hallucinogens. Hallucinogens are psychedelic drugs, and they basically, when you take them, they distort objects and sound, and give you this, you're not in reality sense. Hallucinations, they call them, right? So a major type of hallucinogenic drug, also called psychedelics, drugs, is LSD. It's lysergic acid, another name for it, and basically diethylamide, lysergic acid diethylamide. I have a hard time pronouncing, but it's most potent. In fact, one single drop can make 1,000 people high. It's the size of a pinpoint, and a pinpoint of LSD from 8 to 16 hours can make a person on this trip for 8 to 16 hours in their blood. So it stays in their blood a long time, the size of a pinpoint. They say it's used to make people more creative, to expand their minds. But this is just an illusion, because you can lose your mind on it. It's very unpredictable. Some people have good trips, and they're very pleasurable. They think, I got to do this again, huh? But one bad trip that's terrifying, they'll never forget it their whole life. It's impossible even to describe this bad trip that they have. And some people even get so paranoid that they want to kill themselves or jump off buildings because they think they're going to fly, or have do bizarre things in these trips. And of course, there's also the flashbacks. Some people get flashbacks, and flashbacks they can have way later on. This flashback of this terrible bad trip that they had. And this can reoccur several months or even more later on, these flashbacks. So LSD, onto PCP, another terrible drug. They call it angel dust. And it's can be in the powder or water. It's most dangerous, and it's very unpredictable. A person will have severe vomiting, seizures, strokes, extreme fevers above 108 degrees Fahrenheit. They can have brain damage, especially with those high fevers, and go into a coma and even death. One dose of PCP can give them permanent brain damage, and permanent physical and mental problems. The user becomes extremely violent on PCP. Many are hospitalized. There's many deaths. There's bizarre suicides and murders on PCP, and a lot of police officers basically say, berserk. PCP addicts go berserk. They're called the berserk drug that makes them berserk. So stories of berserk addicts are widespread in law enforcement circles. Another drug is MDMA. This is called ecstasy, a drug called ecstasy, and it is a hallucinogen and a stimulant. It has the short-term and long-term effects. Some of the short-term effects, first of all, your inhibitions are reduced and your mood is drastically altered and your senses are destroyed and you'll start having hallucinations, right? Same as LSD. Also, what happens with ecstasy is your blood pressure drops, but your heart rate goes up. And so in that, is very detrimental on that point. Your blood pressure dropping and your heart rate, going up. Sometimes your blood pressure dropping too low. Your kidney function is impaired. Your body temperature starts getting higher. You get going to hypothermia, dangerously high temperatures can cause brain damage. Severe migraines. Some people get spasms of the face and their teeth are grinding and eye starts trembling, those kind of things. But the tolerance develops quickly, so then you need more doses so that you can basically overcome your addictions and you have more serious side effects. But also, ecstasy, MDMA, has long-term effects, and these long-term effects are serious. Specific neurons are damaged in the brain or killed. It kills brain cells. In the long term, changes the brain functions in your brain. It changes the brain chemicals in your brain, leading to constant depression and emotional disturbances. Your mental abilities are impaired. At high doses, it's very toxic to the liver and your liver starts failing. Also, your hormone levels are impaired. So you'll have problems, reproductive problems, maybe never having children, right? So those are our hallucinogenic drugs. Horrible, huh? LSD, PCP, and ecstasy, you stay away. Oh my goodness, the side effects are terrible, or the effects of them. Now let's go on to inhalants. Inhalants are those that are inhaled like a cigarette or inhaled into your lungs. So let's see. Let me get into where I'm at here in my notes. Okay, inhalants. So this talks about household things that we inhale, chemical solvents. And it used to be these kids, they'd go and they want to inhale some chemicals, so they'd go find some cleaning stuff or some kind of chemicals in the house and start, inhaling them. They get really giddy and think, oh, this is really funny. You see what this drug is doing when I inhale it. And sometimes, they would lose their balance and sometimes even vomit. And then they go to sleep. And some never even wake up when they go to sleep. They end up dying from inhaling household, items. So sometimes these items are more dangerous than the hard drugs. They cause headache, pneumonia, nausea, loss of bladder and bowels, brain damage, liver damage, kidney failure, blindness, make you blind, and heart failure. All these things from inhaling chemical solvents that are in the house. So it's really important. Parents, watch this. Basically able to kill a child that just thinks it's fun by inhaling some chemicals, some cleaning stuff or something. The other inhalant that's very common is marijuana. So marijuana comes from the hemp plant, from the hemp plant's leaves and its blossoms, basically calling it cannabinoids or cannabis. So it's the most commonly used illegal drug in the United States. In many places, marijuana now is legal. So, and again, it says, every junkie I ever met started with marijuana. This guy said, yeah, marijuana is an entrance drugs into the drug life a lot of times. Marijuana has a combination of hallucinogenic, stimulant, and depressive effects on the body. So you can hallucinate on it, it can stimulate you, and it can have depressing effects. And millions of Americans, use marijuana now. The average age beginning use of marijuana is only 13 years old. Smoking marijuana is harmful to the body in several ways. So let's see what those ways are. So basically, the risk of developing cancer, just like cigarettes, especially lung cancer, is increased. The reproductive organs are affected because your hormones are lowered, and it lowers your fertility if you ever want to have children. And it also gives problems if a pregnant woman is smoking, I would say smoking dope, that's what they used to call it, or they're smoking marijuana. It can affect the unborn child. It makes chronic bloodshot eyes that are very sensitive to light. They want to stay in the dark, your eyes hurt. Respiratory infections are also common. Just like smoking cigarettes and stuff, respiratory infections come. But smoking marijuana also has harmful mental and emotional effects. So immediately after smoking a joint, that's what they call it, a joint, the user typically experiences some psychological changes. So their motivation decreases. They're smoking like, oh, I don't care, whatever. Their self-discipline is gone. They're very apathetic and they don't care about much. They're very listless. Ooh, I don't care. The short-term memory is gone. They can't remember exactly what they just did this morning. Their judgment, their coordination, their depth perception, all these things are impaired. Their judgment is the main thing. So their inhibitions are lowered, and they basically say things they shouldn't say and do things they would never normally do. Mood changes, many have mood changes, very moody all of a sudden. And then, of course, psychological dependence. Basically, they can become dependent on marijuana just because psychologically think they need it. They call it the mind habit, that now their mind has to have have marijuana, the mind habit. So they may feel invincible like a Superman or whatever, or they may feel very fearful and paranoid. It can call paranoia. They just think that everybody's after them. Their decision making is very difficult. They can't say no usually. They just say, okay, yeah, I'll do that, whatever, And at the point, they come to a point where they're burned out and paranoid from it. They become very depressed and isolated. And even some users become bored with the effects of marijuana, so they go on to harder drugs. They think, okay, I need something more than just smoking dope. Taking a toke. I need to go on to harder drugs. And usually they're in the environment where they can get harder drugs. And so many move on to cocaine and heroin, So nowadays you have to be very careful of marijuana because it can be laced with PCP and LSD. Or sometimes they even put embalming fluid, for goodness sakes, on marijuana. So, not really a good thing to start doing. How about narcotics? So, what are narcotics? Narcotic is a powerful drug that relieves pain and may produce stupor. So, narcotics are used a lot in the hospital to help people that have severe pain, And It also gives you a temporary feeling of you're feeling pretty well. I feel okay. But it's very easily addictive. So one of the main narcotics is opium. And opium is made from the opium poppy, the poppies, and it's a narcotic. It's been used all over the world for many, many centuries, Opium is famous for its effects, knowing. And it's because it's used to relieve pain and produces these good feelings. But later on in Europe, especially in the middle class, it also became easily addictive. And so we have this here. It says Thomas de Quincey published a work, Confessions of an English Opium Eater, basically say how popular opium was, saying happiness might now be bought for a penny and carried in your waistcoat pocket. Portable ecstasies might be had in a bottle, and peace of mind sent by the mail. So you can see how during history, this is 1821, a lot of the middle class were using opium, But the ecstasy of which De Quincey wrote turns into agony. However, when addiction to the drug takes over, the user must take more and more of the drug to cope with their life, so it gets very addictive. So let's talk about some of these opium derivatives, because now we do have, not just opium, they have other names for it, and one of them being morphine. Let's see. Okay, let me get rid of this, Sorry. What happens? There we go. Morphine. Sorry, I lost the page here. Morphine is a derivative of opium, and it was the beginning. They had morphine to use in the hospital a lot because it was considered non-addictive. But now we know that morphine indeed is addictive. And they used morphine a lot for pain, for cancer, and serious injuries. So it turns into be a good drug if it's used by prescribed medical purposes. And not used in drug abuse. But morphine is a derivative of opium. And heroin, I'm sure you've heard of heroin. So heroin, it's a bad picture there. Heroin, what happens? Heroin is of opium and morphine. It's a highly addicted, more of a street drug, of course. And many that are addicted to morphine turn to heroin. It's more addictive than morphine. And you basically either shooting it in your veins is the most common way of taking. It's also inhaled, and you can smoke it, and you can put it in capsules, and you could pop it underneath your skin with needles, all these things. But the main way most addicts take heroin is that they shoot it in their veins. So dealers sometimes even add borax or powdered milk or other things to heroin just so that they can, make more money off of it, right? Heroin is very easy to overdose on, and many, many people die of heroin abuse. You can make a list of all of the rock and roll stars, and you go back and stars and actresses, and a lot of people, in the midst of they were turned into heroin addiction, or died of drug addiction. You think of, Janis Joplin and, all these, back when my time, a lot of them dying of heroin addiction. So it's terrible, terrible. So also they can have, because they use needles, they can have contaminated needles. The street people use the needles laying around, it's mainly heroin abuse. In fact, I heard that heroin is so common, even in Auburn, California, heroin is commonly used. So a lot of drug addicts all over the United States still, addicted to heroin. Heroin cannot cause hepatitis and AIDS from the needles being contaminated or using somebody else's needles. In the AIDS epidemic, a lot of, back in the 80s when I was a nurse, we did pheresis for AIDS patients, And a lot of the patients I had that were dying at that time were drug addicts that were heroin abusers, and they got HIV positive and AIDS, from sharing needles. And we're talking about thousands dying, or contracting AIDS, especially if you're a drug addict. And so heroin also causes heart and lung problems, ulcers, tetanus, and abscesses, all from this IV drug abusing, right? Especially with heroin. Other IV drugs too, but heroin's a popular one. So here is an anonymous poem that graphically describes what heroin does to the user. I'm going to read it. So now, little man, you have grown tired of grass, LSD, acid, cocaine, and hash, and someone pretending to be a true friend said, I'll introduce you to Miss Heroin. Well, honey, before you start fooling with me, just let me inform you of how it will be. For I will seduce you and make you my slave. I have sent men much stronger than you to their grave. You think you could never become a disgrace and end up addicted to poppy seed waste? So you will start inhaling me one afternoon. You'll take me into your arms very soon. And once I have entered deep down in your veins, the craving will nearly drive you insane. You will need lots of money, as you have been told. For, darling, I am much more expensive than gold. You'll swindle your mother, and just for a buck, you'll turn into something vile and corrupt. You'll mug and you steal for my narcotic charm, and you'll feel contentment when I'm in your arms. The day when you realize the monster you've grown, you will solemnly promise to leave me alone. If you think you have got the mystical knack, then sweetie, just try getting me off your back. The vomit, the cramps, your gut tied in a knot, the jangling nerves screaming for just one more shot, the hot chills, the cold sweat, the withdrawal pains can only be saved by little white grains. There is no other way, and there's no need to look, for deep down inside you will know you are hooked. You will desperately run to the pusher, and then you will welcome me back to your arms once again. And when you return, just as I foretold, I know you will give me your body and soul. You will give up your morals, your conscience, your heart, and you will be mine until death do us part. Wow. True. How drastic is heroin? Addiction. So we're going to stop there, and I'm going to go on to the next and talk about meth and depressants and some other types of drugs.